With the 2023-24 NBA season quickly arising, there's a team that I talk about every single year a lot, but especially before this season, I always love to give out my predictions and talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves as they're my favorite team, and talk about what they need to do this year to be not only in playoff contention like they have been in the past 2 seasons, but be a real championship contending team. I have 5 points, and I want to talk about them with you guys, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on these points in the comment section down below. So let's get right into it. My first point is probably the most obvious point, and that is Anthony Edwards just developing and becoming that real superstar that we all expect him to be. He's played very well in the World Cup so far, as Team USA has gone undefeated, and they played Jordan in a couple of days here at 3:40 in the morning Central Time, so I will not be tuned into that, but I will be watching the highlights. But we've seen Anthony Edwards show out in the World Cup and play like that real superstar we know he should be. Last season in the playoffs and the year prior, we know he performs in the playoffs. And in the season, we also know he performs. He's a knack for the spotlight, if I want to say that. You've seen the videos, we've seen everything. He's just a good guy, a funny guy, a guy that gets it on the basketball court and gets it off of the court. So Anthony Edwards continuing to develop and becoming a superstar will surely help this Timberwolves team. And really, this is the biggest point, because if he does not take that leap this year, the Timberwolves are not going to be in contention. Point blank, period. That's just how simple it is. And that's why it's point number 1. Number 2, we have Rudy Gobert really starting off strong. That's the whole point here. He needs to start off strong, unlike last year. Last year, the first half, he was not great. Not what we expected when we traded basically the whole farm for him. So I expect Rudy Gobert to start off on a strong foot this year, considering that last season he was coming off an injury from playing internationally. And Rudy Gobert, if you could come out and just play at that level you were playing towards the end of last season, not quite that Jazz level, but the level that brings us to a really good defensive team, alongside of having Anthony Edwards and Jayden McDaniels, which we'll get to later in the video. But Rudy, get off strong, continue strong, and play well this season. We need that if we're going to contend. The rim presence, the protection, the lob threat with Mike Conley, all of that is going to play a big part into the Minnesota Timberwolves potentially, I don't know about winning a championship, but at least making it interesting. My point number 3 is the development of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a guy that Utah basically gave up for nothing, considering they got Russell Westbrook, who they ended up releasing anyway, and they basically got a first-round pick, which is what they really valued. But Minnesota gets him in a trade that sends D'Lo to the Lakers, and we get him and Mike Conley and a couple of second-round picks, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been the real surprise of this trade. Nickeil has shown his potential to be a true 3-and-D high-level player in this league so far with Minnesota, and in the World Cup, he's seemed to improve on his main flaw, and that is when he shot in the NBA last season with the Timberwolves. It was either a swish or an airball, for better or for worse, because we loved it when it swished, but it made me cringe when he airballed, and that's fine, but it looks like his jump shot is quicker and a little more fluid and a less of the one way or the other type of jump shot, and that's what we've seen in the World Cup so far. He's performed in the World Cup, showing off his defense and also showing that he has an offensive potential out of this world for what everybody expected him to be in reality, especially Utah. And Nickeil, as long as you develop, I truly believe that he's going to be a guy like a Bruce Brown level player, maybe even better, where every championship contending team wants this guy on their roster because he does the dirty work and plays overall smart basketball. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, in my opinion, could be a real asset and real piece coming into this upcoming season, and potentially a 6th Man of the Year candidate with Minnesota. So, Nickeil, develop. All these other assets, develop. We might win a championship. I don't know, maybe. Don't sleep. My 4th point here is KarlAnthony Towns getting back into the swing of things. The torn calf last year, no doubt, threw him for a whirl, and I actually remember where I was when he got injured. I was at the gym with my friends playing basketball, and I really thought he tore his Achilles. He looked back at his calf and Achilles like somebody kicked him. Seen it in the past. That is an obvious sign of a torn Achilles. and yet he dodged a bullet, if you will. I mean, he still tore his calf, but, you know, at least it's not a torn Achilles. And I expect Cat to get back into the swing of things. We've seen this in the World Cup, and a lot of the players in this video are playing in the World Cup, and that is, he looks dominant again. In the World Cup, he looks like he's attacking and shooting at a high level, and he looks confident in his abilities again. And that's something that Minnesota really needs. We don't need the 6 shot attempts KarlAnthony Towns like he had last year in the playoffs at times, and last year during the season when he played in the year prior. We need KarlAnthony Towns that is looking to create and make and shoot his own shots off the dribble, off the catch, and also just attack the paint. I know Rudy's going to be in there sometimes, but Cat, we know that you're a shooter, but we also know you're a dominant paint force when you're locked in. So, Cat, get back, playing well. Cat, you could be a real asset here. If you're listening, man, KarlAnthony Towns, we appreciate you here in Minnesota, even though sometimes we don't. That's all I have to say. KarlAnthony Towns, as long as he gets back into the swing of things with Minnesota, and with the torn calf, obviously, I don't think that should affect him too much coming into this season, as going into the playoffs last year, he did look quite a bit better than the first couple of games of the season, and the first couple of games he got from coming back from the injury. So as long as KarlAnthony Towns is playing well and looks like that dominant force we all know he can be, I think this team and the Minnesota Timberwolves could be a real championship threat. Now, going on to point number 5. Point number 5, in my personal opinion, very well could be the biggest point here, and that is Jayden McDaniels playing at a Defensive Player of the Year candidate level. And last year he didn't make all defensive because, as we know, the media does not know ball. But Jayden McDaniels was a real threat on defense last year, and ever since he really came into the league, we know him as a great defender. His offensive bag is only getting bigger and better, and honestly, in my opinion, he could be an all-star this year if he continues to develop like I expect him to. But I don't need him to be an all-star. I don't need him to be a great offensive player. I need to be a all-NBA defender, a Defensive Player of the Year level candidate. We need him to be Jayden McDaniels. That's simple. Jayden McDaniels, continue to do your thing, continue to improve on the defensive end, and maybe show a thing or two more than we saw on offense. And that's saying something, because last year he improved quite a bit on offense. If he improves even more, scary sight for the league. But as long as he's playing elite defense, he can do whatever he wants on offense. Jayden McDaniels, great player, we know this, but the defense is really what we look for, and he's going to lock down your favorite team and your favorite players' attributes. I mean, everything. I mean, we saw him playing point of attack on Steph Curry. My man is 6'9", and we've seen that Jayden McDaniels might have even grown this offseason, looking at about 6'11", which is crazy, because if he still has that defensive versatility, imagine, Kevin Durant, but instead of it being that offensive threat, it's that defensive threat. And that's no slouch at KD's defense, as KD is a perfectly capable defender, but Jayden McDaniels is a completely different level defender than like a KD type of player. So if Jayden McDaniels can guard Steph Curry and be 6'11" and guard 1 through 5 at the NBA level, as we've seen he can do, what can you do to stop this type of player? You already have Anthony Edwards, who we know is a perfectly capable defender with extreme defensive upside, and his offense is already there. And you pair him with Jayden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert and KarlAnthony Towns, this team on paper should be a championship contending team. But those are my 5 points. Minnesota and Minnesota fans and NBA fans, let me know what you guys think about this video and what you guys think about what I said and how they could be a championship level team this season. Appreciate you guys watching. It's been your boy Jelson. Peace out.